So the topic of the speech that I want to, or the topic I want to examine is youth in America, and specifically the role that youth need to play and should play in the fight against abortion. The youth are, they're always an interesting group. They're always someone we talk about whether they need to be more involved, more responsible, and this same idea applies to the issue of abortion. And many young people hesitate to get involved in it. They think for whatever reason that they're not qualified, that they feel inexperienced, like they don't have the life experience necessary to deal with it, or that they're so young that, you know, what type of role could they actually play, how effective could they actually be out there in the world. It's completely against the culture of our peers, too. In order for a younger person to go out there and expose abortion, everyone around them is going to be against them. The schools, the culture in the schools, everything is opposed to them. And especially as young people, I think they're very sensitive of that. We're always trying to conform to our peer group and fit in. And so these are things that challenge young people, that make it harder for them to get involved. But the fact is, we need young people to get involved. And obviously, as we've discussed throughout this conference already, all Christians need to be involved in the fight against abortion, and they all need to be involved in loving their neighbor. But there's several key responsibilities and reasons why I think the youth have a special role to play in that. And so I want to cover that. Rather than addressing each of the problems the youth might face, or the reasons they might not want to get involved in that, I want to cover several key areas, several of the key reasons why the youth need to get involved in the fight against abortion. And the first thing I think we need to clarify right off the bat is that this may sound kind of different at first, but we as youth have to recognize that we are men and women of Christ. That just because we're younger than everyone else, and yes, we definitely do not have as much experience as our adults and as our older friends, doesn't mean that we're not adults, and it doesn't mean that we don't bear the responsibilities of adulthood. The fact is that adulthood is not determined by the government. It doesn't happen when you turn 18. It doesn't happen when even your parents say you're an adult. It happens based off of your maturity and your ability to act in a way that God has called you to act, to be responsible with everything that's been given to you. Adulthood depends on maturity, not age, and that's something we have to recognize. We're not children, teenagers. If you go out there and engage the culture on abortion, you're not children. You're children, but you're children of God, and you have a responsibility and you have the ability to attack this culture. Like I mentioned, we're all Christians, and all Christians, regardless of their age, share the same responsibilities. They don't share the same jobs. Maybe someone's called to serve a particular function or go about the responsibilities a certain way, but we all share the same responsibilities. Most notably, we all have the responsibility to love our neighbor. Regardless of our age, we are men and women of God, and we are called to love our neighbor. A second important reason why the youth need to be involved in the fight against abortion, and this doesn't mean to sound prideful, but the fact is the world, in a large part, answers to us. If you look to our culture, if you look to the music in our culture, if you look to everything that the new innovations, new technology, the market, what people are catering to, what advertisements are catered to, it's all focused on the youth, a large portion of it. Obviously, other age groups have a role in that too, but the youth bear a huge portion of what the world caters to. And that means you have a huge influence in the world. If you decide that you're going to take a certain position, if you decide that you're going to stand against the culture of death, it can have a huge impact. You know, we're really the consumers of this generation. Everything is marketed towards us. You know, you hear all the time about how in Obama's election campaign, he targeted the youth because the youth were a powerful powerful source, and effectively being able to harness their power was key to his success. And the simple fact is that the youth bear a huge portion of power in this world. That's definitely not justified, I would say. It would be better if it wasn't that way. But the fact is, you have a huge amount of power in this world, whether you like it or not. And as Christians, it's your duty to use that power as God has called us to use it. A third reason, and this doesn't exactly tie into the two I just brought up, but a third reason is that we have to answer for the next generation. When we have children and we're talking to them, they're going to ask us, why do we still have abortion if we ourselves aren't doing anything about it, and it continues up until that point? And if we still have abortion at that time, that's our fault. That's our responsibility. I don't like blaming my parents, but we have abortion today because they didn't do anything back then. And we need to change that. We have a responsibility for future generations. And I want to be able to tell my child, if I have one, or my children, that I did everything I could to stop abortion. And hopefully by that time it's abolished. Another very key, very important reason why the youth are so essential to the fight against abortion is that we are on the front lines, whether you like it or not. In a war, the army has some say. They know where the battle lines are, and they say, okay, we're going to send these people to the front lines. They can do the battle. They're trained. We're going to put this group here on the front lines. But the fact is, in the fight against abortion, the youth are on the front lines, whether they like it or not. The majority of where all these abortions occur are, college-aged kids, high school, teen pregnancies. That's really the key area where a huge portion of that happens. It's happening in our schools. It's happening to our friends. And whether you like it or not, you're on the front lines. And so you don't have a choice whether or not you're going to be in the midst of the battle. You have the choice of whether or not you're going to stand and fight that battle or whether you're going to hide. And if you're on the front lines, you have a duty as a Christian, regardless of your age, to engage in that battle and to fight the evil that you're faced everywhere around you. It's not like you're not in the midst of the evil. You are in the thick of it, more so than any other age group in our society. In addition, not only are we in the thick of it, not only are we surrounded by this culture of death, but we also have some of the largest assets. We're one of the most free age groups in terms of our ability to do what we want. We don't have family. Most of us have limited jobs. A lot of us have jobs, but that's typically pretty limited. And we have school. We don't have a lot of the responsibilities that adulthood bears later on in life. And that means that if you don't have other responsibilities, if you don't have the responsibilities of raising a family, you have the responsibility to use your time in some other way that glorifies God. And there's very few ways you can glorify God better than by saving his image bearer that's being ripped apart in your own backyard. So we have to recognize that the fact that we have the most freedom in terms of our responsibilities it requires us to act in a manner that uses that extra freedom, that extra time in a manner that glorifies God. Additionally, having the youth involved in the fight against abortion provides further credibility to this cause. It's not entirely accurate, but a lot of critics, pro-choice critics of, say, the pro-life movement, like to claim that it's all a bunch of old white guys. And the fact is that if you have a large diversity in your group, it does lend further credibility to this. And so we have to recognize that in order to remain credible, in order to effectively present our position, it can't just be some older person with gray hair. It can't be middle-aged people with families. It can't just be even the youth. It has to be all of us. And if one of those portions is missing, if one of those age groups is missing, a huge portion of our credibility is lost.
a huge part of our message is lost, because they know, well, those youth claim to be Christian, but they're not following what everyone else does. They're not, well, everyone else isn't necessarily fighting abortion, but they're not following the typical abolitionist movement if youth aren't actually doing that. So in order to show that Christ affects all of us, not just the old, not just the middle-aged, not just the young, in order to show that the responsibility to care for our neighbor covers all age groups, we need to act. We need to show that, we need to provide the credibility to this movement, the proof that God works in all of us. Finally, and this actually kind of ties into one of the claims that people that the youth feel, that they feel inexperienced. We need the training for later on. There's no better way to prepare for fighting abortion than to actually start doing it. If we don't start getting our Christianity right now, I don't know why we would think that we're going to get it better later on. There's no better time to prepare to start engaging the culture, start fighting this culture of death, and be preparing so that you can be a mighty warrior of God later on in life than if you start right now. Training starts now, and that training isn't necessarily restricted to outside, to inside. That training in Christ comes about through engaging the world, engaging this culture of death, and standing up for the unborn. And so, abolitionists, they act, we always act, and we do honestly believe that if everyone acted as God has called us to act, we could abolish abortion tomorrow. And so everything we do is really taken with that expectation that abortion can be abolished tomorrow. That's what we're working towards. But the fact is, we want to be, if abortion continues later than we expect, we want to be prepared to continue to fight it. And so we as the youth need to be involved now. We need to be getting the training and the experience necessary to continue to fight this evil so that we can abolish it. Those are several of the key reasons why I think the youth bear a special responsibility for fighting abortion. But I want to start to summarize by ending on something that's not unique to the youth. It's more on everyone getting involved, the reason why everyone needs to get involved, and that is that you have to understand the significance of this battle. There comes a point when you realize that every 30 seconds a child is dying, and you can't just stand on the sidelines and let it continue to happen. No analogy is perfect, but I think I'll tell a story that might help to illustrate this. It was about 3 years ago when we were living down in California. It was a Wednesday morning, about mid-morning, beautiful sunny California day, and I was getting my school day started. I'm homeschooled, and I hear screams outside the house. And this wasn't just the usual "ee" screams that I always hear from my sisters all the time that make it impossible to study. These were different. This was something serious going on. And so I run to the front of the house, and I open the front door of the house, and I look out there, and there on the pavement is my sister curled up in a ball, and there's a large dog, a boxer dog, on top of her, biting her and mauling her. And at that point, I didn't stop and think, have I been doing enough push-ups lately? Do I have the muscle mass needed to get this dog off my sister? Or where's the rest of my family? We should all get involved and fight this dog together. Or what kind of footwear do I have? Steel-toed boots would be nice to kick this thing off. What am I wearing? None of that really went through my mind. There was a lot of things that could have been better that would have prepared me to deal with that situation. I could have had a lot more resources to deal with that situation. But at that point, you could tell that something needs to be done now. And so my response is, that dog's going down, and in t-shirts, shorts, and I think I was barefoot. I run out there and beat the dog off my sister. And that's the same response that we need to have to this issue. There's a certain amount of planning that needs to be going on. You know, all the 2 modes of abolition and the 5 tenets and all that. There needs to be a strategy. But at the same time, we have to realize that people are dying.
That's right.
And we can't wait and sit on the sidelines. We need to act now. Regardless of your age, this needs to happen now. And a second thing you can pull from that is that any person I know would have acted the same. Any true brother would have run out there to protect his sister. Any true father would do anything possible to protect his wife or his children. Any wife or mother would take any means, would do anything to protect her children and her family. And as Christians, any true Christian is called to act in the same way towards their neighbor. And we need to act the same way we would towards our family members if they're being attacked, as we would towards our neighbor who is being dismembered down the street from our house. It's time to recognize the peril of our neighbor. There is quite literally blood flowing through our sewers. Children are being dismembered on the same piece of property that you stop at to buy the Starbucks on your way to work, or for many of us, youth, on the way to school. This is not something we can afford to sit on the sidelines any longer, regardless of our age. It's time to act. And this is not an issue, as we've mentioned earlier, that we can simply afford to just hold a belief on anymore. As we've mentioned earlier, if your belief is that you're pro-life, you don't think abortion is good, you're no different than someone who's pro-choice. Beliefs don't change the world. They don't. They don't have any effect at all. And quite honestly, if the only action you're taking is voting doesn't change anything either. We live in a country that has millions of voters. I live in Washington. I'm 17. I can't vote yet. But when I can, at least in the presidential election, the Electoral College is going to take my vote away. It's really not going to have any effect at all. But voting has next to zero effect. What has an effect is when we actively go out and use our beliefs to engage the culture. An abolitionist, by definition, is someone who's defined by their action. They're someone who is following Christ and following as an action, someone who's actually engaging the culture, going out there and doing everything possible to stop the slaughter that is occurring. The main purpose of the speech was not to tell the youth how to get involved in the fight against abortion, but more importantly, to just show them the need to get involved. But I want to quickly cover what the youth can do. And the first thing, quite simply, is to contact us. You can contact the AHA as an organization. You can contact search or you can go to the website and see a list of abolitionist societies. Contact a local abolitionist society, get involved in that. Or you can start your own abolitionist society. We'll work with you. Abolish Human Abortion is constantly working with people to set up abolitionist societies everywhere, and it's not super challenging. An abolitionist society is pretty simple. It's just one person actively seeking out other people to join them in the fight against abortion. Additionally, start engaging your peers, regardless of whether they're in school, whether they're at your job. It's part of life. Abolitionism is part of our walk with Christ every day. And it's something that we need to be engaging in every day. Engage your peers. And I tacked this on just because I think it is important if it's not occurring already, but talk to your parents. Get your parents involved. If your parents aren't involved in fighting abortion, you can help persuade them. You can help get them involved. So the fact is, we as youth bear a huge responsibility for stopping abortion, and it is time to act.
That's right.
Paul mentions that we need to be able to boast in Christ. And I want to be able to look at my peers my fellow Christians in my age group and be able to point to them and be able to boast in Christ through them and be able to show the culture that this is what Christianity looks like in a culture that kills its children, where not only older people, not only middle-aged people, but even the youth are willing to step up, represent their God, and stop the destruction of the innocent.